Welcome to the Blind Zone, where curiosity brings its own reward. What am I curious about today? I'm curious at why a book has changed so much of my life. And for this time, I'm not talking about the Bible, because that changes my life every day. But a number of years ago, I read a book called Necessary Endings by Dr. Cloud. And I read it, and it was good. And then, because of the providential care of God, he had it cross my path again. And I read it just recently. And as you can tell by the title, Necessary Endings, it's exactly what the book implies. And there was 14 chapters to this, to which I'll talk about two. And in conjunction with that book, I read another book by John Piper that said, Don't Waste Your Life. And so I guess that was a powerful 1-2 punch, because I took a lot from each book, and I'm going to tell you about what my takeaways were. In the Necessary Endings book, one of the chapters was talking with the author and a man that he knew he needed to fire an employee that he had. So the man walks off, and he came back a short while later. And the author asked him, So how did it go? The man sighed deeply and said, Well, instead of firing him, I extended his contract. And the author laughed and said, So instead of breaking up, you're now engaged. And what resonated with me with that story is I've done that. That's it. This is it. I'm done. Well, maybe one more time, maybe another chance. So in the book, it details why we do that and when we know we need to cut that tie, break that tie, whatever it is. And in this book, it's through all scenarios. It's about relationships, working, not working, enabling other people. And another chapter in the book talked about a man who knew he was going to have a hard discussion with somebody else. And he went in there and he had a list written out, because Dr. Cloud said, go in with it written down, even if it's in bullet points, so that you stick to your program, that you're not distracted. And so he did. He went in there, and when the other person tried to derail him, he might have said something like, hang on. And then he got back to what was written on his paper. And so by the end of it, the man was concrete with what he had to say. He didn't allow for the deflections, and that the conclusion of the conversation was what the man needed it to be. And I thought about that, because in the past, I'm going to say this, and I never figure that they're going to say what I don't imagine them saying in my head. And so that's it. You really have to practice that out. You have to know going in what your ultimate goal is and what you plan to succeed by the end of the conversation. Now, I'm not saying that you can't compromise and think through what other people are saying. I'm only talking about this in relationship to necessary endings, when you know something's not in your best interest and it needs to end, and it needs to end conclusively. And the last chapter, the 14th chapter, the author was having lunch with somebody, and he said, what I recognized was the necessary endings that had to happen were so that I could have a better beginning going forward. And that's what I recognized in my life too, that there were some things that had to end so that I could close those doors and walk on a path that the Lord prepared for me going forward. It might be in a different direction, but it was still God-centered. So that, in the book by John Piper, Don't Waste Your Life, they really dovetailed well together. And I learned the lesson, and there are some things that I did have necessary endings on. Now, I know when I moved here, I had some necessary endings with people that I knew were not in my best interest. But I did that after some real hard soul searching, and I recognized to keep them in my life was almost toxic, and that wasn't good for me. So if you have a problem in this area, I recommend the book Necessary Endings by Dr. Cloud. He's also the author of Boundaries, which I've recommended to a gazillion people as well. I don't know about you, but I know that this book has really helped formulate and make my eyes see things in a way that I hadn't before. And it was just comforting to know that I was not out on a limb by myself, and that I had some backup. So that's it. Look at the things that you might need a necessary endings for. Pick up this book, and that's it. So we'll see you next time on The Blind Zone.